Hey there. Many of my clients express that they want to experience unconditional love in a relationship. This seems to be something that a lot of people actually want. So I want to take a few minutes to address that today. The first thing I'm going to say is that there is only love in the universe. And love is not conditional or unconditional. It transcends the polarity of our experiences. However, that's not to say that relationships are experienced in the same way all the time. So I will get into that in a little bit here in this discussion. Now, when we think about the very nature of our physical experience and how we come into birth, we must realize that several conditions have to be met for us to even be here. So the first condition is that our parents have to meet, okay? They have to decide to have sexual intercourse with each other. Now, once they decide that, then there's a next step of the sperm and the egg meeting, joining forces and creating you. And then you passing through all the health checks, let's say, health checkpoints, to actually come into physical existence. So this in itself is a set of conditions having had to be there in order for you to exist in physical reality. Now, a mother's love is neither conditional nor unconditional, because the mother is going to want to protect her child. She has to put some conditions for that child down so the child stays protected. So she is going to have certain conditions for the child to survive and make it. Okay? Similarly, the dad is going to have the same situation. So there's no such thing as unconditional love even in that situation. Now, what I want you to start to recognize, though, is that if you really look closer at a mother's desire to protect, she might have to give certain conditions or boundaries for the child to live within. But along with that also comes her idea of loving you. You can't change the fact that she doesn't love you. So love is actually encompassing of that experience with your mother where she wants to protect you so you can survive. So love does exist there. However, she had to give you conditions for you to survive and make it in the world. Same with your dad. Now, when it comes to our relationship, somehow we magically expect that we can be whoever we want to be. We can do whatever we want to do, and somehow that relationship should just make it through. And the hard truth is that this fantasy is what gets relationships in trouble. Why? Because we enter relationships that are truly not compatible for us to actually be entering to begin with. Okay? They're not realistic, they're not practical. And then we get in these relationships and we find out that they're actually not suitable for each other, and we're forced to actually leave the relationship. Okay? So, in an intimate relationship, in fact, it is very, very important that you recognize that you are actually in a physical reality with that relationship. It's not a fantasy. Therefore, you are going to experience the challenges that physical reality is going to present to you. As part of that, you do have to be conscious and attuned and emotionally intelligent and mature enough to recognize which relationships are actually compatible for you and which ones are not. So, for example, if you're someone who is traveling all over the world, then a long-standing relationship with a person who doesn't like to travel is not a realistic or a practical choice for you. Okay? So there is a condition in the love and relationship that you can enter into with this other person or whoever you're going to enter it into with. Okay? Similarly, if you are a high-powered executive like I was in the corporate world, you're going to have to understand that you are going to be limited in what you can do. Okay, so for example, I was traveling a lot when I was in the corporate world, and my then partner had a choice. He either could choose to live with the fact that I was traveling, or he could choose that the relationship was not right for him. But there were conditions to being in a relationship with me. So it was not unconditional love I was able to offer. My love was conditional. Similarly, on his side, he had a choice. If I spent a lot of time doing work after I came back in town, after traveling for 5 or 6 days, he had a choice of saying, I don't want to be with you, because he probably did not want that. Okay, so there were conditions attached to him accepting the fact that I was going to travel 4 or 5 days a week. Okay, so there is no situation in which there are no conditions in a relationship. And part of what has happened with a lot of us is that we expect that we should be loved unconditionally. And this is a fantasy and a myth. We have to get extremely realistic, downright honest and transparent with ourselves and see if the type of relationship we want to have in our lives is going to actually be workable and practical for who we are. And we also have to be careful in choosing our partner, because if we end up choosing partners who are really not compatible for us in the overall picture, even though there will always be areas of incompatibility, then it's not realistic to enter that relationship, okay? Especially if you're wanting a long-term monogamous relationship or marriage, okay? These are practical considerations. You can't marry or be in relationship with a surgeon and expect that they're going to be 100% attentive to you all the time, because their love is actually surgery. Similarly, when I was working in the corporate world, I loved what I was doing and loved that I was traveling to different places. If my partner at that time had told me, I don't want you to travel, that would have been the end of the relationship for me. Because it was my professional ethics, it was my professional choice to travel at the time. So these are practical considerations for you, especially as ambitious entrepreneurs and homemakers who are constantly striving to improve yourself, to develop yourself, to change your mindset around things. It's important to not live in fantasies and instead come back to the reality of your situations and truly assess if your relationships are compatible and practical at the deepest levels possible. Like I said, you're not going to be 100% compatible, but you want a balance of compatibility and incompatibility in your relationship. That's when you're going to grow. Maximum growth is going to occur on the border of compatibility and incompatibility, when you can support and challenge each other. So these are important considerations for you as you enter a relationship. Is it practical? Is it doable? Is it workable? And at the same time, as we start to step into this model, we also want to recognize that the form in which love comes actually changes. This is important for you to recognize. Because when I'm not experiencing or giving love to my partner as a result of traveling a lot, where am I diverting my love and attention to? Well, in my case, I was diverting my love and attention to my projects at work. I was directing my love and attention to the people that were working with me. Okay? I was socializing with them, building connections with them. So that's where love and attention was going. So you have to understand that the universe's intelligence is always diversifying you. It's actually allowing you to grow and make you bigger as a human being, richer in your experiences. So at the same time, now you look at how your partner has given you unconditional love, if you want to call it that, and you honor that person, you recognize their contribution, and you make it worthwhile for them to actually accept you in that way by giving to them what they need. Now, that's what a relationship is about. It's about fair exchange. It's about being equal in your partnership. Now, if you don't want that, then you're going to be better off to have a one-time relationship or, a one-time affair or whatever you call it. But if you're wanting a long-standing relationship, then you have to get really honest with yourself. And the honesty is about you recognizing what you can give and what you will need to have in the form of conditions, and being very upfront about those conditions, being very upfront about who you are and where you are in your life and what is important to you. And if it doesn't work for the other side, then giving them the freedom to meet someone who will give them that is exactly the thing to do. That is a form of love. That is a form of love. Okay. Now, if you're a surgeon and you are immersed in surgery work trying to save lives, that is you pouring your love in a different way, in a different channel. And if your partner is not able to accept that, it's not the right relationship. But what happens with a lot of us is that we get into these type of situations and expect the other side to change. We expect them to live in our values, and they are not going to do that. That's why our relationships become more situationships, or even sometimes end. They fall flat. It's because there is no compatibility. There is no understanding and agreement on what's workable and practical in a relationship. So I invite you to really, if you are in a relationship, review your relationship and notice where things are unreasonable, impractical, illogical, and biased. And see if you're being reasonable and expecting what you're expecting from your partner. This is really important. And this is when you actually start to realize that whether you are in a relationship or not, when you can change the way that you relate to yourself and the other, when you can actually open your heart to see where they are, that is a form of love. And sometimes in that process, you actually have to let that person go. Yeah, it's not easy to do that, but in the long run, it's actually the best thing to do. Have a good day.